I will start in 1 minute. Sports as a tool for community development and advocacy. I'm Vlad Spencer from More Learning. I'm based in Washington, D.C. This webinar is organized by World Learning, working with Digital Communication Network, and it is sponsored by the International Sports Initiative of the State Department Sports Diplomacy Division. So on my behalf and my colleague, Anata Devosian, who's based in Yerevan, Armenia, I want to welcome you. As you know, we are all together confronting this devastating pandemic. And as you know, as you can see, I have my own mask here. We all should have it because it's a public health need at this point. And this pandemic brought the whole world like the common denominator, fighting this very, very serious public health crisis. The problems that are confronting our society is being poverty or inequality or unemployment, lack of opportunity, divisions, discriminations. All these problems are still with us. And to some extent, this pandemic is magnifying the problems that we are confronting with. Our guests today are part of the solution. That means, they are trying their hardest to deal with these challenges through the only tool or the tool that they know the best, which is sports. They're involved in sports. They come from a variety of locations. They come from Washington, D.C., Bradenton, Florida, where the WNBA bubble is also from Ramallah in the Palestinian territories and Casablanca, Morocco. So I want to welcome them, thank them very much for their participation in our webinar. Welcome you, the audience. And by now, probably since March, you are familiar with this tool, the webinars on Zoom. You know that there's a chat room. The chat room could be used also for networking. So please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and also maybe some websites that you want to connect with your work. And at the same time, most importantly, please ask questions in relation to what is discussed here. That being said, Anna, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vlad. I want to welcome all our speakers and all the participants. I think that this is a very interesting and issue and a very interesting topic for us to discuss. So I would like to start with the questions to all of our speakers. So let's start with our overall topic, sports for development and advocacy, and ask each one of you, what does it mean for you personally, based on your work and experience? And in the process, you can tell us a little about the communities that you are working with. So I would like to start with our good friend, former WNBA player, and now the assistant coach for WNBA team, Chastity. Chastity, please. So what does it mean for you, sports for social development?
Awesome. First, thanks. Hello, everyone. Obviously, it means a lot for me. I was born in a small rural town in North Carolina, so a very poor town for the rural area. And sports and diplomacy, first of all, it transcends your culture. So I grew up along the racial lines of the white people stayed on this side of town, the Black people stayed on this side of town. So we were a smaller version of what Mandela did in South Africa with how sports, brought people together across those racial lines. And I remember my high school team making it to the state championship game, and that kind of gelled my community together and brought white people along with Black people together for a common goal, and that's to support us and win. And so sports transcends different cultures. It transcends gender roles. Sports is huge in diplomacy for encouraging women to join and become a part of sports. As we see with NBA and WNBA, you cannot ignore politics. So it influences, not only socially, culturally, but politically as well. Sometimes it can be used for negative means, as we've seen in the past, the Olympics. you just can't escape it. So sports and diplomacy go hand in hand. But the reason why I'm so passionate about it and what I work with using my true sport basketball clinics is just trying to reach rural kids and give them a platform to see the world. Because I believe that most people are closed-minded because they don't get outside of their box and they're not able to see the world. And that's what sports is able to do for young people and the community.
Perfect. I want the other speakers to answer to this question, then we will have more questions for you. Mohammed, please.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Thank you. We're learning for this webinar about sports and social impact. I am Amin. I am from Morocco. As a former international basketball player and founder of Thibaut Morocco. Of course, sports is something very crucial for everyone, for kids, for girls, for poor families, and everyone who are in a vulnerable situation. For us, Thibaut, we work with kids who don't have access to sports, and we offer for them a program and focus on basketball and physical activity to develop their personal development, but their skills also. And for us, this program helps kids to develop their self-confidence, their self-esteem. And I think sports should be something for something important daily, it should be a daily activity for everyone, because for example, in our country, Morocco, we don't have PE classes in public schools for kids aged between 6 to 12. And our advocacy or our big work for every day is to create the next generation of champions of life. For us, the next generation of champions of life through the power of sports is to first develop their soft skills, life skills through the power of sports, but also to have an idea about what is teamwork, what is leadership, what is engagement. And through the power of basketball, shoot, pass, dribble, are teaching this. So I can share with you more best practices. And yeah, thank you so much for this introduction.
Sure, we will come back to you for sure. Yeah, I'm sure there are lots of good examples, and we saw by ourselves how you work there. So we will go to Riza. Riza, hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're zooming in from. I'm really excited to be here and really appreciate the opportunity to be here with all of you today. My name's Risa Isard. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm zooming in from Washington, D.C. It's really, I think, a pleasure to connect globally and also personally, really a pleasure to connect back to my roots. So I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, where Chastity now serves as an assistant coach for the Mercury. And I believe wholeheartedly that the path I'm on today is because I had the benefit of growing up surrounded by the energy that launched the WNBA, the most successful women's pro league in U.S. history. The Mercury gave me my first job in sports, and well before then, they were also my first partner in like a sports for good type of activity. I was in elementary school. I coordinated a toiletry drive for a local women's shelter. A family friend who was a season ticket holder, who's actually on here today, said, you know, I think the Mercury can probably help you with that. And so the Mercury, for 3 years that this drive ran, sent players to congratulate the class that raised the most toiletries. It was awesome. And it was my first taste at sport for good. My personal theory of change has evolved since that time, no doubt. But I know that without those early experiences of engaging with the Mercury and sport for good and just being around a WNBA team as a 7-8-year-old girl, that I wouldn't be who I am today or be here talking to you all today. So today I'm a Title IX historian. For those of you who aren't as familiar with Title IX, maybe you're not calling from the States. It's a federal piece of legislation that passed in 1972 that requires all federally funded educational institutions to provide equitable treatment, regardless of gender. And so it often gets used for sport. It's not just for sport, but it absolutely revolutionized girls and women's sports in the US. And in the context of Sport for Good, when it revolutionized sport for girls and women, it revolutionized all of these other opportunities that were now available to girls and women, including education, including leadership opportunities, including advocacy. I'm also a sports policy expert and an advocate for advancing equity in and through sport. And so I think when I think about that, like when I think about Sport for Good, thinking about equity in sport and equity through sport are both so important. We need to create equity in sport. We need to have equal pay and training and access and promotion and coverage and marketing, all of it, because that's what's right and it makes sense from a business perspective. And that's what people deserve. And we need that equity that we create in sport to help push us for equity out of sport. Again, right? Thinking about pay gaps and access to opportunities and recognition and promotion and understanding and values, and the standards we have for people, all of it. And so I think when we think about Sport for Good, it's how do we create change in sport so that sport itself is equitable? And then how do we make sure that when we do that, that we're also creating change that transcends out of sport? I think the most important thing to help us do that is to recognize, as Chastity said, that sport can be a force for good, but it isn't inherently, right? There are plenty of times throughout history when sport was leveraged for values that I don't believe in, that I don't think made our world a better place. And so if we're going to believe in sport for good, we have to be really intentional and interrogate our own actions and practices and policies. We have to ask ourselves questions regularly, like, is what we're doing equitable? And who is this helping? And who is being left behind or left out, even unintentionally? Sport can create a ton of change, but it won't do it automatically. It takes all of us, those who are on the call today who do this work, to make sure that sport is actually being used for a tool of positive influence. Lastly, I would say I think we can really use sport to see where inequalities exist. So much of the time, sport mirrors what's happening outside of the stadiums and outside of the stands and outside of the front office. Like, it's truly a mirror for the cultures that we live in. It's a microcosm of what's happening. It's a barometer of what's happening, a temperature check, and it can help us be better advocates for what's happening outside of sport that then lets us use sport to do that. So my career has been built around looking at these issues and working with organizations to use sport for good in a variety of ways. It's what I continue to do today, and I'm also going to be starting a PhD in sport management to focus on equity for girls and women, people of color, and LGBTQ folks in and through sport in just a few weeks. So I'm happy to answer questions about any and all of that. I'm really excited to learn from all of you and from the other panelists, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here with you this morning.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing with us. We'll come back to you as well. Now, Tamara, please.
Hello,
Hi.
everyone.
Hi.
And thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I would like to share a short presentation to talk about my journey as a person in sports and how it, coming from Palestine, how it helped me through going through a lot in my life, but also how I translated that into an organization that has become globally recognized also in sports for development. If you can see my screen at the moment.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So I will start with a bit of my history in sports and how sports for development, or like giving back to the country through volunteering, inspired me to also start a Sports for Life organization. So throughout all my life, I was sports was with me all the time. I played as a national team player in basketball in Palestine, but also when I continued my studies in Jordan, I also played for the national team of Jordan. I also worked in Germany, so I also found a team where I played professionally. So sports was basically with me all the time. So when I went back to my country, I started giving back, volunteering all the time with little kids coming from marginalized areas. And I saw how much sports affected me, that I was able, and I saw the importance of sports to do some good back in the country. So I continued also in the academic world to have the academic basis to be able to start sports for development programs where I started Sports for Life organization. It's a nonprofit organization in Palestine, which I'll go now through. But I also am continuing and almost finishing up my PhD as the first Palestinian academic in sports for development and creating youth employment opportunities in the West Bank case, let's say. So a different community tool for empowerment. So I'll go back a bit for Palestine Sports for Life, where I started as a nonprofit organization. And the idea behind it was to do programs that are aligned to the SDGs, basically the special needs, or like the needs that in the Palestinian context, coming in conflict area and under occupation, where we have lots of marginalized places and communities that we need to work with. So we're working across Palestine, empowering young youth and also children, and working with the teachers and trainers who in end effect give back to the schools and work together all in all as a community tool for empowerment. I'll just give a brief on what we do. So we do sports for education.
Hello, Tamara.
We lost.
Individual development of refugees and children in marginalized areas, but we do that before. Can you still hear me? Can you still hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Continue.
So what we do is also customize our programs that they focus on the different community needs that we're working with. So we do lots for employment, we do lots for education, we do lots for gender equality and equity, and we work on the English language as a tool as well through sports. We have, of course, then the life skills that comes with all of the sports for development programs we do. We have different models. I will just go through them very, very quickly. So we do training of trainers, where we work with teachers and social workers in schools. As we have a connection with the Ministry of Education and UNRWA, we keep up to date with all of the teachers that we have trained throughout the whole years. And these are also then potential youth trainers who get then job opportunities for the training in their communities. As we offer also community programs that are for free in the community. You can see these videos on our YouTube channel. We do lots of event and community programs. As I mentioned, they are after school. We also try to support some infrastructure and fundraising for the schools in UNRWA to try to create some safe places for young girls and children in their schools to have proper sports and life skills, and then connecting them with different S4D topics. So that also increases the school attendance, having sports in the schools, specifically the UNRWA schools that have refugee kids in there, that they have something to look up for, and they're happy in this positive environment, but also then they are learning something over there. You can also watch that. We also do winter and summer camps that are focused on different, as I mentioned, S4D topics, where we connect vocational education, civic education, leadership. So it's more of career pathway, career counseling, all of these things that we have. Each camp has a certain topic to it. This is one example that can be also seen. What we are also working on is developing curriculums with the different international organizations, or like putting in our experience, which we have adapted to the Palestinian context, but also in the region, working on adapting the S4D experiences that we have into curriculums that are being now used in the Palestinian Ministry of Education, Palestinian youth centers, and also in Jordan and the region. And I'm happy to answer any other questions later on, of course. This is in brief. You can check our Facebook page, our website, our YouTube and LinkedIn and all of that to learn more about our programs in details. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. So, fascinating examples of contributions to social good. Let's go to another round of questions with brief answers, and then encouraging the audience to please write some questions. Anna is going to monitor them, and then we'll ask them directly to the speakers immediately after. So, Chastity, obviously, there's a pandemic, but everybody's aware that in the United States there are all kinds of other issues, important issues that society is dealing with at this point, and also this discussion of sports people having a voice or using their voice in order to accomplish those societal goals. We know that you have a podcast. We know that you wrote a book. So you are one of those voices. So what can you tell us a little bit about sports people, professional sports people, gaining or having a voice or contributing to public debates that are of importance for the society?
Well, first of all, for women, I just got to say first and foremost that we have a very unique voice and it needs to be heard a lot more because it's been silenced for so long. So for me, it was challenging and it took a very long time, especially as an African American, to be very confident in using my voice, especially in male-dominated society, as far as sports and basketball goes. As far as playing basketball goes, because I've always played for a lot of male coaches. In the pros, I've had male GMs. I mean, males just dominated the arena as they still do, although women are making great strides. So once I learned that my voice mattered and that, despite if I felt like people were hearing me or not, I had to use it. So that's what I like to encourage young girls. And now it's just for young African-American men and just everyone in general. Sports, I know growing up, just personally speaking from my culture, we were always taught, like, if you spoke about politics, you had a very high risk of losing your job. So when I became a professional athlete, my dad quickly told me, like, if you mix politics, you could easily lose your job as a professional. And I know for a fact that a lot of Black men were told the same thing. So our voice was always silenced from a very young age because that was the first time we were able to provide financially for most of us, for our family, in playing professional sports. So you were always conflicted of using your voice and sharing your truth. So now it's a great time in our climate for everyone. Obviously, social media has helped with this because you can brand yourself and you can voice your opinions. But I mean, there's a thin line because also athletes aren't as educated as the normal citizen in America, and sometimes, there's a thin line of just making rants and not being well educated on a lot of the grassroots organizations that have been working on different areas in politics. So we just kind of come out without the education. So for me, I started my podcast and I have a lot of relationships with people who are on those grassroots organizations on their PhD for race and social movements. So I like to have them come on and ask them questions and share my opinion. So that helps me with my platform and using my voice. Like Chas is just not out here throwing different opinions out and not kind of, I have someone to kind of throw those my feelings and my truth off of that has studied the movements, that understand the strategy behind political movements. So I think athletes are doing a great job. I believe they are now partnering with different grassroots organizations to stand behind their beliefs and what they want to put their focus and their money towards. And so it's just a great time for the world because not only has it opened the conversation and people can see, like, I feel like our culture looks at athletes, especially with the racial injustice that's going on now, that once they become professional athletes, they somehow escape racism. And now I think America is seeing that the LeBron James, the NBA players, they're still getting stopped by cops. They're still experiencing racism no matter what type of level they've reached in the professional world. And as African-American women, we deal with sexism and racism. So now we can discuss and tell our stories. And so it's like a double whammy. So it opens up the conversation. And unfortunately, the pandemic is here and people are static. They really can't move. So it's forced them to, hey, we can't ignore this anymore. So for me, I just encourage athletes to get more educated when they're out speaking on social media. And there are tons of people who have started grassroots programs who would love to partner with them. And it's just a great benefit for both people in evoking change in our community, socially and politically.
Yeah, and these are topics in itself, and hopefully after you get out of the WNBA bubble, maybe you could have a separate webinar on all these topics. So, question for Amin is, Anna and I know very well the impact of your program in Morocco. One thing I could tell the speakers and our audience is that if Mamin, Mohammed, ever chooses to run for mayor of Casablanca or mayor everywhere in Morocco, he would be extremely successful, because walking with him on the streets of Casablanca, everybody knows him, through the many kids that were part of this program. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about, your program, how you reach out to the community, what type of issues this community is confronted with that could be dealt or are dealt through the TB programs in Morocco.
Thank you, Vlad. I'm sharing a presentation with the audience to share more about TIBU and about our work. So TIBU started in 2010. First, it was like an international tournament for university teams coming from different countries. And now it's more than a tournament. It's the leading organization in Morocco focused on education and integration of youth through the power of sports. And every day we work with girls, boys, we work with kids, youth, we work also with families, educators, teachers, and we give them a promise to build a generation of champions of life through the power of sports. And how we do this? We have two major axes or two major pillars. The first one, be active. How everyone can be active every day through the power of sports. In this pillar, we have two big programs. The first is about youth empowerment. So we reach more than 200,000 kids per year through basketball caravans in middle and high schools, through basketball caravans in rural areas, in popular neighborhoods, through summer camps for kids aged between 6 to 13, for kids aged between 14 and 18. We have summer camps focused on girls. We have also summer camps focused on kids with motion disabilities. And also we organize 3-on-3 basketball operations. In all these programs, we promote the values of sports, but also we talk about sports social entrepreneurship, about personal development, and we give the opportunity for kids in Morocco to discover basketball. And in the same topic, we have programs focused on education. In 2013, we created the first basketball academy in Morocco. It's called Tibu Basketball Academy. We started with 25 kids. Now we have more than 600 kids for 2022, coming from French, American, Spanish, and private schools. We had a very good results in the first and second year. And we say, yeah, it's good to have this academy, but we need to work with kids in popular neighborhoods because they don't have money to come to our academy. So we started a program with the Ministry of National Education, and we signed an agreement, and we started a program. It's called Tibu Centers. So we choose a school, a primary school in Pune, and we offer, we arrange basketball courts, and we select 100 kids, 50% boys, 50% girls, and we offer for them a program focused on basketball, French, English, and STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math through sports for free every Wednesday in the week. We started this in 2015, November 2015. We have more than 19 centers in 14 cities in Morocco. More than 4,000 kids are playing basketball, are learning English, French, leadership for free in 14 cities in Morocco. And what is the impact? 88% of our beneficiaries have now good results in the school. 0% of dropout of school. And now we are working with the Ministry of National Education and with the Ministry of Interior to develop more than 63 centers by 2023. We have in the same topic or in the same pillar of education through sport, we have also the first wheelchair basketball school in Morocco. We offer for kids motion for kids a program focused on wheelchair basketball, but also personal development. We had the opportunity to develop a partnership with National Wheelchair Basketball Association and also U.S. Embassy in Morocco. And we give the opportunity for these kids to be engaged in sports every week. And we work also with their families on positive education. This is the big pillar. We have the second one, work first. We work with youth, Netherlands, implement or training. We have more than 2.7 million youth in this situation. They don't have job, they don't have diploma, they are only passionate about sport. And we offer for them 1 year training focused on sport coaching in different sports, basketball, football, fitness, rugby, surf, etc. We offer for them also courses on French, English, and Spanish, courses on Microsoft, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and also modules about sports social entrepreneurship, financial education, and how they can organize sports events. And in the same, so they have professional experiences. For example, in the morning they have class. In the afternoon they go to Nike store, Reebok store, or they go to tennis academy. They discover what is sports industry and what we can work with people in the enterprise. And in the final, we give them support to have access to implement to the job market, and they finish as a sports coach or they finish also as a sports entrepreneur. And we have also another program. It's called Sports Social Business Lab. So we work with young Moroccan entrepreneurs passionate about sports, and we work with them on their entrepreneurial mindset and how they can link their passion with a social issue in Morocco, like education, health, gender equality. And it's a good opportunity to share with all the people here and all the audience a huge program we are programming, and we are planning the first Education Through Sport Summit in Africa. It will be in April 2021 from the 3rd to the 6th of April in Casablanca, Morocco. We bring more than 8,000 actors from Africa, US, Europe, Asia, and we will organize conferences, workshops, and PD workshops focus on women and girls in sports, sports for tech or sports for innovation, sports for social change, and sport for development. And we will have also an opportunity to organize a sports education hackathon to encourage sports entrepreneurs. And also we will have like a big expo to give the opportunity for NGOs from Africa, from different countries to expose their impact and to connect with decision makers. And in the final, we will work with all the experts and specialists for an effective advocacy to defend sports in preschool, in primary schools, because in Morocco, for example, there is no PE classes in preschool and primary school. So it's dangerous. So we are working with the Minister of National Education, with the Minister of Sports and Youth, with the Minister of Interior and all the stakeholders, how we can, bring sports and to develop access to sport for everyone. So we will have a lot of countries who will be here. I think Tamara should be here also because I think we met through STEM sports, Jeff Garner, and it will be a huge program, and I can share with you more information through learning and Anna and Vladimir. Thank you, Vlad.
Definitely. Thanks, Mohammed. And I could tell you that you already have here, I think, Carole Ponchon, hopefully I pronounced her name correctly, from France, said already that she wants to be at the summit. As you know, we also plan to be at the summit, the Sports Diplomacy Division of the State Department. It should be an amazing gathering, mostly considering the impact of your program in Morocco. So count on us, and let's continue to spread the word. And by the way, audience, sure, more questions, and it's very important actually to connect, to network with us, to let us know who you are, and to continue to work together, because the goal of this webinars is not only sharing knowledge, but sharing also personal information in order to form and continue networks. It's a networking tool, so hopefully we'll use it well. Now, before getting to the questions that were asked already by the audience that Anna is monitoring, Lisa, I'm sure that this is a question that probably Anna wanted to ask, because Anna, in addition to being our colleague, is the member of the executive committee of the Armenian Football Federation, in charge with the women program, and they're doing amazing things. You guys should probably be in touch. But Lisa, maybe tell us a little bit more about challenges facing women in sports, mostly in sports that are actually historically or traditionally or in people's minds previously dominated by men. So Chastity mentioned a few things, but maybe you could explore it a little bit further, this topic. So women in sports and challenges they are confronted with.
Yeah, thanks. It's a great question, and I want to start actually by sharing something I heard Allison Felix, who's the most decorated track athlete in U.S. history of any gender, and actually maybe has the most gold medals of anyone globally. Like, I'm pretty sure she has more gold medals than Usain Bolt. I had the privilege of working with her a few times and hearing her speak at an event a few years ago, and she said this thing that I hadn't heard anyone say ever, and I thought it was something I hope I'll never forget. And what she said was really simple, actually. And it was some version of there's no one monolithic girl. So this question of what are the barriers that are keeping girls and women from sport is such an important question. And so often we answer that question with here are the things that are keeping girls and women from sport. And we think about it as if every girl and every woman in the US or even globally has the same experience when it comes to accessing sport. And the reality is that girls and women, certainly globally and of course, even within the US, have such different experiences based on who they are, based on where they live, based on their skin color, based on their sexual orientation, based on their gender presentation, based on their family's income. Quite literally based on everything. And so the reality is that the answer to what's keeping girls and women from sport is actually quite complex. And I think it comes back to the fact that every girl is situated so differently in this country. We know that, as you've heard from plenty of people, and I'm sure you all know in your own experiences, that sport historically has been the domain of men and boys. And so generally speaking, girls' sport, women's sport is almost a site of protest inherently. It's claiming power in bodies and space and leadership and voice that has historically been kept from women and girls. And within that, I'm not surprised to hear Chastity say that, she got the advice to keep quiet on politics. And it's not lost on me the fact that most of the athletes, particularly in the WNBA and the NBA, are people of color, and that the management are white folks, right? And so, of course, from a racial equity lens, white people are going to say to a labor force of people of color, we don't want to hear your voices on politics because that upsets the norms that have benefited, white people and particularly people in management in sports for so long. And so I think women and girls have faced, similar, barriers to using our voices and finding power and strength in our bodies. Certainly, girls who have disabilities have, different experiences than girls without disabilities in accessing sport and programs. But it all comes down to cultural values. We know that girls drop out of sports at a much higher rate than boys earlier on. And it's because, quite frankly, everywhere girls turn in this country, they're told that they don't matter as athletes. So one of my favorite examples, I feel like I get this question all the time, like, how do we get more girls in sport? And at the same time I get that question, we live in a world where coverage isn't equal. So why would a girl or a woman think that their sport matters when they're not, quite frankly, getting paid what they're worth, and they're not getting, media recognition like they're worth? There's a lot of omission. So when the World Cup was announced as for the 2026, it's, as some folks may know, it's a joint bid that won between the US, Mexico, and Canada. And the official Twitter account of the Canada Soccer Federation tweeted, "We are so excited to host our first World Cup." And that's really problematic because Canada hosted the Women's World Cup in 2015. And I was there, and so many hundreds of thousands of other people were there, right? And so I think, despite the fact that girls and women come from so many different backgrounds based on all these different identities that we hold, the reality is that across the board, we're told that our sports don't matter. And we're always fighting an uphill battle to have respect. It's not the cool thing to do to be the sporty girl. And you can't make a career out of it, and you're going to get mocked. And there's a lot of homophobia, whether you're gay or straight or bi or pan or right, like whatever your sexual orientation is, there's a lot of discrimination that happens and social capital that gets kind of wielded against women and girls in sport. So I'll leave it at that. I think, the takeaways being that every girl and every woman in this country holds a myriad of identities, and there are experiences we share that are similar in sport by the fact that we all share this gender, and that across the country and globally our sports aren't valued, and also recognizing that there are very distinct barriers facing girls at different intersections of their identities, and women.
Yeah, and maybe before asking questions from the audience, maybe, and I could also say a few words, because talking to her about her experience, in Armenia, when sports is growing, the women football sports is growing, it's mind-boggling how complex the issues are. How much is the mindset, society mindset, and doesn't involve within management. It involves parents, and it's involved public reaction, it involves media. So many prejudices that are very difficult to deal with. And again, doing this type of work, promoting women in sports, is basically bringing society at another level, the whole society, which is extremely, extremely interesting. Now, moving to Tamara, for a quick question. Tamara, obviously, you live in Ramallah, and politics aside, it's a very complex situation, and I would like to ask you a little bit about the type of challenges that your young people are confronted with. You mentioned unemployment and the role of sports in relation to unemployment, and maybe you could discuss that a little bit. But in general, you are in a place of such diversity, but such deep problems, mostly for the minds of the young people. So maybe you could tell a little bit about using sports in relation to your concrete situation, in addition to what you already mentioned. Tamara?
Thank you. So yes, youth here in Palestine, like Palestinian youth, are facing lots of challenges being here in Palestine. So there is a lack of freedom of movement at some points, and this, of course, in terms of employment, in terms of sports, in terms of just day-to-day life, it's difficult. So talking about employment specifically, we have at least a 55% unemployment for youth graduates, meaning that they did go to university, they finished university, but they come out and there is no employment opportunity. That is in the West Bank. And if we take Gaza, then it's over 65% of unemployment for youth graduates. So we are talking about high percentages, and if we look back at it, there is, of course, on different levels, on a macro level and on a micro level. If we talk about the macro level real quick, it's just about the education system and the employment system that is here or in place in Palestine. Of course, that is affected with different strategic alliances, let's say, that is affecting on the macro level. I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to go down to the micro level because on the macro level, we'll need the whole session about that. On the micro level, when we're talking about youth, so basically there's a mismatch between what is coming out of the educational system and what is needed in the labor market. And for that, the youth cannot do anything about it because this is what is actually offered in the universities. That is one case. And the second case is because of the economic pressure that the youth are facing, that they have to finish up to 10th grade, leave school because they are economically pressured that they need to work. And there is a black market at the other side, which they can gain with, you know, labor, low skilled labor, that they can gain some income, that they can come back to their families and support their families. So there are two things that are playing a place here. So one is employment or like economic pressure, and that lets them drop out of school at 10th grade. But then there's also that they go and study something in the education that doesn't match what is needed in the labor market. So what we are doing through sports is that we are going for orientations at 9th grade and 10th grade through sports. So we have a sports program where we are talking to youth. We are examining their tendencies and their competencies. So for instance, we have the psychological Holland test that we are using so that they know in which personality they are, what is their tendency towards which subject, what are they good at, etc. That we are trying to let them see what it means if they are into these tracks. And then we kind of match them with different educational pathways. So either a vocational track, academic path, entrepreneurial path. And we have adapted all these sports drills in terms of football or basketball, like these are the two main sports here in Palestine, that we have adapted drills for them to talk about these things as a reflection at the end of the drill. So we connect, for instance, goal orienting in a drill, and then we talk about it at the end of the session. And then we have a classroom session where they adapt that to that, like where they actually reflect on what they took in the session. In addition, for instance, that they know how to build a resume, or just for them to know where they're going, things that they would need when they leave school or where they finish school, just for.
Hello, Tamara. I think we lost the connection with her. Okay, I will like to
For them to know the track. We teach them the code here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now we can. Yeah.
Just like last point, that in terms of vocational education, which is really needed here, because we have the triangle of work here. For instance, we usually need one engineer and then 20 technicals to support the engineer, but we have it upside down here. So we have 20 engineers and one technical person, due to the mindset that we want all of our kids to be engineers, we want all of our kids to be doctors, but there is no capacity because Palestine is a closed area, that there is no opportunity for these things, but there are many other opportunities, specifically in, for instance, IT sourcing and different needs. So what we are trying to do for the kids is just to orient them and take them to entrepreneurial hubs, to vocational schools, so that they can feel hands-on what it means if I want to be a graphic designer, that I can outsource my my skills out of Palestine. There are no borders there electronically, so you can work so much on that. So these are things, that different opportunities that we are trying to raise the awareness for the youth on what employment opportunities can you have in outside of our restrictions, and just to orient them on what is the need in the labor market. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. So, just to illustrate a little bit, how our interactive session works. So Stacy here asks if the curriculums are available publicly, and so I count on you, in the chat room or separately, maybe to provide some references to the curriculum that all of you actually mentioned in what you do. And Carol again, says that she might visit, Ramallah, and she wants to connect with you. So hopefully, this parts of the program are actually probably even as useful as the webinar itself, because it creates these connections, and hopefully these connections will materialize, and hopefully will keep us involved, and will let us know how we could help in any way, either through the State Department programs or individually at World Learning. So, Anna, I know that you looked over the chat, collected some questions. Maybe we'll try some live interventions. So let's see what we got.
Yeah, if Barbara Lefkowitz can join us now, I would like her to ask her question, because she's very interesting. She shared a little bit her bio. Barbara, can you ask your question and share a little bit about you?
Sure. Thank you for asking me. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, very good.
Okay, great. I've been a nonprofit executive in Phoenix, Arizona. That's been my life work. I've worked at different nonprofits, including YMCAs, YWCAs, and homeless shelters for many, many years. And in fact, the toiletry drive between the Phoenix Mercury and Risa Zard benefited my shelter. But my question is with the onset of COVID, many adults and youth are being restricted in participating in organized sports. And I think that that's taking away from them not only the opportunity to learn sport, but also to learn the things that come along with sport, which is teamwork, learning to get along with different kinds of people. How do you all think that we can ease back or provide those opportunities to the youth and keep going with our ideas of equity and social justice? Participation of girls, participation of people of color, other things during this COVID crisis. And I'm going to mute myself now and listen to the answers.
Okay. Who wants from speakers to answer first? Amin, let's see how you deal with this in Morocco.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I will share with you our work during this COVID-19. Can I share a presentation?
Yes, sure. You can share your screen.
Okay, I will because it's a video, but no problem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So from March 16, as I presented, we have two big pillars: the Be Active, so programs focus on empowering girls and boys through the power of sports, and also programs focus on education. So for our programs, for focus on education and empowerment of young people through the power of sports, we launched the guide or the capsule Chastity for Reality. So in April 6, 2020, on the occasion of the International Day of Sport for Development and Peace. And this capsule is targeted more than 4,000 families and children who benefit from our programs, and it was the opportunity also to encourage them to adopt a healthy and active lifestyle while staying at home. So through physical exercises, through healthy food, so also through the COVID-19 measurement, and through some tests and quiz. And for our programs or our professional programs focused on integration through sports and sport social entrepreneurship programs, we switched all the programs to e-learning mode. So we have equipped all the beneficiaries with tablets and Wi-Fi subscription, and all the teachers, speakers, coaches, and mentors communicate and animate and follow up on daily basis on all the courses and activities. For our staff, we have more than 93 people in Tibo, Morocco. So our 93 colleagues in the 14 cities in Morocco worked from home. Weekly meetings, monitoring, and reporting are done on a regular basis in order to anticipate the rest of the season, but also to anticipate the season 2020-2021. So what is the learning? The learning, someone who, you hear me well? You hear me?
Yeah.
What is the learning? For 2021, so we have an action plan, so programs in poor neighborhoods, caravans, etc. But we have also COVID plan, because we are not sure that we can be in the game from September or October, but now we are working how we can start 2021 with two plans, the normal plan and the COVID plan.
Amin?
I finished.
Yeah, okay. Chastity?
Yeah. Yes, great points. I mean, I personally haven't figured that out yet, Barbara. I have two sisters and great friends who are struggling right now in rural North Carolina because they are not going to allow kids to come back to school. And they don't understand how their kids are going to learn virtually. That's going to be a huge struggle. And some parents are working from home with little ones. So I actually am trying to find and do more research. As far as sports, none of the kids in rural areas, they closed the parks. I have my own nieces and nephews. And no one will see us, Aunt Chastity. We can play. We can still play. So it's unfortunate. And I'm not quite sure. So I really can't give you a lot of information there. But I'm looking forward to researching and trying to find out different ways, especially after the season's over, of what are some of the things that I can do.
Tamara, what do you do there with the COVID situation with the kids to be active and to be connected?
For us, we developed two programs. One of them is to have active sessions online. So we are asking our trainers to hold sports sessions online on our, like it was like My Health, My Wellbeing campaign, just to keep our youth connected. So where they are actively taking part in sports sessions in different sports. We also connected with Australian trainers who were giving on our page different sports from Australia. We connected also with the United States. We have an organization there that is called Hooper Mentality. They were also delivering basketball sessions until today, where Palestinian youth and all youth from all over the world could connect to our page and just, you know, do the practices. And the good thing is that they're recorded videos so that they can go back there and, you know, stay actively involved. In addition to nutritional sessions, just talking about the well-being in terms and health. So for them to know what to increase their immune system, healthy habits in these times. We have also created a platform for young girls. So we called it electronic voices, like e-voices to choices. So basically where we have the girls coming from different parts of Palestine, sharing their thoughts, like their challenges towards sports and also day-to-day life in their areas. And it was like a platform for them to voice their, you know, their feelings, but also how can we do together, like work together to support them in their areas in terms of sports, in terms of education, in terms of moving from one area to the other. In terms of that is electronically, but we also have many refugee kids who do not have any electronic access. So what we are doing is through our network of trainers that we have trained in the different parts of Palestine, who are close to the refugee camps or who are coming from the refugee camps, that through global organizations like Common Goal, we were able to support them with hygiene and medical supplies, but also just with, of course, taking all the protection measures to doing some activities for them just to keep them involved, keep them active, and maintain their well-being. And also in the Jordan Valley specifically, where there is a lot of pressure on the kids over there. So we are also working with them, sending our trainers over there who are also doing different sports activities. And all of these sports activities, together with coaches across continents, with their curriculum in terms of raising awareness on COVID, and which we have adapted also to the context that we are working in, that we have delivered different activities for the kids in the Jordan Valley. So we are trying to, through our network of trainers, to reach the vulnerable areas and also then electronically to all the youth in Palestine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tamara. Risa, do you have any programs designed for the COVID situation?
So I don't run programming, but I have two quick thoughts to share. One being, I think sometimes we think about these complex problems and it's like, here's how we used to do it, and here are the restrictions that we're facing. And so how within these restrictions do we keep doing that thing that we used to do? And I think sometimes what a moment like this forces us to do is actually to say, like, can we reimagine everything? And so when I ask myself that question, I think about two things. One is, it depends on the sport, but there's particularly for kids, there's like a lot of benefit to having, instead of big games, having small-sided play, right? So if you think about soccer, playing 11v11 isn't actually developmentally appropriate for young ages. In basketball, right, 5v5 isn't that many, but 3v3 is a really valid basketball game, or 2v2. And so I wonder if this is a moment for us to explore more robust opportunities for small-sided play, which within like public health restrictions as necessary, but it might be a way to think about getting kids connected to sport in a way that is a bit safer than a 5v5, 11v11, 6v6 volleyball, whatever, like 9v9, baseball, softball. So how do we small size what we're doing right now? Which isn't perfect, right? Kids can still pass it, and you still have to think about parents and things like that. But I think it at least reduces the number. So if we think about like harm reduction approaches, I think small-sided play could be something to explore. I also think another way to think about like redesigning play is, so often our games are designed, they're broken by gender and by age, which means that like mostly families bring one kid and another kid here. But what would it look like if we expanded, so we had co-ed play, so and you're doing it maybe by family. So as long as people are within 3 to whatever years of age, 2 to 3 years of age, what would it look like to have like a 7 to 10-year-old team that might have brothers and sisters on it? And so you have kids coming together, but you're limiting like the germ pool, if you will, because those kids are already part of the same germ pool. So let me clarify, I am not an epidemiologist or a doctor, but these are some of the first thoughts that come to mind for me when I think about, like, instead of asking ourselves, how do we get to having practices the way we used to know them within these restrictions, and say, how do we actually just think differently about bringing kids together around sport, if what we really think is valuable is kids being around other kids safely and developing some sport skills and leadership? So that would be one thing. The other thing I think that's going to be really important is that as we continue to reopen on whatever that trajectory looks like, making sure that we keep equity front of mind. It's going to be really easy for certain communities to resume play, and it's going to be really important that communities that have, quite frankly, experienced lack of access for much longer than this pandemic don't get farther left behind, right? Like when we return to normal, there will be some families whose normal isn't returning to this like idea of every kid gets to play or have access to a park or whatever it might be. And so I know that there was some legislation in front of the US Congress about funds to support nonprofit sport organizations. And I'll be honest, I don't know where that landed, so it might not even exist anymore. But I do know that within those circles, there was a conversation at first that was very much like the travel teams, which are registered nonprofits, like wanted to benefit from this. And very quickly, the sport community said, with a few loud voices, we actually need to make sure that if we're asking for money from our Congress to bail out youth sports, that we're doing so with equity front and center, and that we're not exacerbating disparities as we return to this normal. And so I think of those as separate, right? Like one is what do we think about being able to do right now? And for me, that's how do we re-envision this whole system? And then the other is as we start returning to normal, how do we make sure equity is front of mind so that access just doesn't widen the gap, because there already is such a gap. So those would be, I think, the two frames to be thinking through.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we have very, I think, philosophical and very difficult question from Hisham. Hisham is a basketball coach in Tibu, Morocco. Hisham, can you ask your question? Because myself, I cannot answer on this question.
Hello, everyone. I'm Hisham Benuna from Morocco. I'm very happy to meet you again. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask my question. So I know that most of you guys are using sport as a tool of education and a tool of social change. My question is, when can we say that we have succeeded in our mission, which is the use of sports as a tool for social progress? If I can share, like us at TV Basketball Academy, when Mohammed say that more than 90% of our kids pass the year, that means for us, we're doing a great job. What about you? Can you share with us what is how you're doing with it? Thank you, Anna, for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, sure. Chastity, can you answer on that question?
From a personal standpoint, with my True Sport podcast and just from clinics and the parents, when they reach out, like I don't have an official way to collect the data, but when parents are reaching out and you just see young girls participating more in sports or using sports as a vehicle to gain their confidence. So particularly just for me, I know from rural areas, like I've inspired so many young ladies. And now that I'm older, I'm seeing young ladies who not only play sports, but have created goals for themselves as far as going to nursing schools or different employment avenues as opposed to getting out of rural areas. So that's where I learned, what I'm doing and the things that I'm doing, even if it's just small camps in rural areas, or whether it's having a speaking engagement and mentoring young ladies and their parents, realizing that, the ultimate goal doesn't have to be a basketball player, a professional basketball player. It's just expanding their horizons to get outside of rural towns. And that's when you're being successful, because they're going to nursing school, they're starting their own business, they're using their social media brands to create their own little small businesses, whether it's with hair products or different things. So it's not just sports, it's not just basketball, tennis, but they're getting involved in a lot of other things that before wasn't socially acceptable for them to do, especially coming from rural towns. And also having more men help out with the clinics and help changing their mindset about encouraging women has changed. That's come a long way. And that's just come from my family personally. I believe once I was able to coach men in the NBA G League, that changed a lot of the mindsets back in my rural town. So for some of the men that were my fans, so we had to have those conversations, because a lot of my fans didn't really quite agree with me coaching men. So those conversations had to come out, and it was challenging, but the conversation was there. But it also helped them. And then you have the girl daughter hashtag, like dad's daughter hashtag. So now with the mindsets changing, it's just encouraging the young women, and I'm personally talking about them, and the young boys. I think, Risa, you made a good point. The co-ed, that's a great way to change even the mindsets, because now everyone's stuck, and those are some of the things. So that was a great point you made. I think co-ed with the mindsets changing from young boys, being more acceptable of girls playing sports and the dads being more involved with their daughters sitting around the house like, hey, my girls want to play too. So this is a positive. Like I said, there are a lot of positives that will come out of this situation.
Yeah.
Let me, I will make some pressure for Hisham, and I will, it's a very interesting question. One, for example, one we can say for Thibaut, our mission is done. Now we have 4,000 beneficiaries in Thibaut centers. Just reminder, there is no PE classes in primary schools in Morocco. There is, we have 19 centers. It's good, but it's not huge. In Morocco, there is more than 7,800 schools. So more than 4 million kids are in the primary schools. Our vision by 2023, by 2030 is to make or to have access for all these kids, or to make PE classes in the curricula for kids in primary schools. This is our vision by 2030. We are working on this, and I think in 10 years we can say our mission is done.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I want to ask all of you a general question. So from last year, I'll go to football, soccer again back. So last year, from after World Cup, Women World Cup in France, mainly the women soccer national team of US were very vocal in every issues, and they had a big platform, big fans. And some of the people, some of the articles, they said that they are very vocal. For example, Megan Rapinoe is very vocal to talk about gender equality, gender equal pay, and all the issues. So what do you
young age to be vocal? Hello.
And I think you cut out for just a second as you were posing the question. Can you re-ask it?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now, Anna, but we didn't hear it cut out right before you asked the question.
I want to ask if we need to teach our athletes from young age to be vocal on social issues.
Well, I'll start. I mean, it's a complicated question. I was actually on a webinar with Girls Inc. yesterday, and one of the young ladies, high schoolers, asked the same question, like, how can I answer questions with the media about? And I personally feel like it's a personal choice. I do think we have to instill in our young girls and our young boys to use their voice, obviously, when they feel like things are wrong or they're not being treated fairly. They definitely need to be taught at a young age to use their voice. But with that, and with social media and with social media branding after coaching in college, you know, young people can also walk a thin line of what they put on social media as far as getting college scholarships, as far as getting accepted in the colleges and everything. So there has to be there has to be mentors for the young people in areas where they have to use their voice, and obviously they have to be more educated. So I would like more so for young people to use their voices collectively at a certain age, where it can be more at a round table as opposed to using their voice individually and standing out there alone, depending on what age they are.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Risa?
Yeah, it's a terrific question. And Chastity, I really like how you think about, you know, at what ages and how does that affect how we think about our athletes? I agree. I do think it's a really personal decision. I think I like the idea of talking with young athletes about what does it mean to use your voice and when they might want to use their voice and how they do it, so that when they decide they want to, they've like gone through some processes of just learning and engaging and educating themselves and just like, and even thinking about what the potential repercussions are, and are those repercussions that they're ready to assume, right? And for many athletes, the answer right now is yes, right? And so I don't think you do that to scare kids, but just like help them evaluate it, and also instill in them a high level of responsibility, I think, and like obligation might be too strong of a word, but help them to recognize that, particularly as they get older and they are athletes, even if it's just at the high school level, like they do carry some level of local weight. And so if we help them to see that they do have influence, and then it's up to them when they want to use it and on what issues they want to use it, I think that's great. I think a lot of times maybe athletes, particularly younger athletes, don't recognize like the power that they hold. So I think this goes in line with sport for education and youth, sport-based youth development, right? Is how do we actually like teach our athletes the power that they have as athletes and as humans? And I think that's an excellent thing to do with young people, and to encourage them that when there is something that moves them to speak up, that they should do that, and here's how they can think about that, and here's how they can find support, and things like that.
Great, thank you. Tamara, you are back. Did you hear the question? Okay, let's see if Mohammed has anything to say about this. Okay, they are not here. Okay, Tamara?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So did you hear my question?
No, I'm sorry, I was cut off.
I asked if we need to teach our athletes from young age to be vocal on social issues or on any issue that they want to speak up.
Yes, for us, what we do usually is we raise their awareness about their rights, because usually in certain areas or in certain settings that they are within, a herd. So they know what's going on, what's expected and so on. So you're not allowed to come out of that herd, basically. So what we are trying to do is through sports that we encourage them to, or actually we raise their awareness about their rights. And if any, through the games that we are doing with them, that they learn that they have that right to speak up. And through the community programs that are usually annual, like all year long, they gain the self-confidence, because this doesn't happen overnight, but they rather need to be trained in that on a long run, that they are in a safe space, that they are able to speak up, and that they know that they can go back to their teachers, they can go back to the social worker in the school, that they can go back to those safe spaces or those safe people that they can speak up to. Because we had so many consequences in different areas in Palestine, where, because in our setting, their tradition, it's governed mostly by tradition in some areas and not by the law. So we have to take that into consideration to protect our young girls, and know where and when to voice their problems. So if they are going to the wrong place, then that's going to cause even more problems. But rather than that, we try to let them know their rights to speak up and where to speak up. And that we do through the games that we teach them, through the community programs, and then through the events that we have specific programs. And if you'd like to know more, you can check a few YouTube videos on our channel, where we have like a few girls from different areas from Palestine, where they are talking about how this event, raise their awareness on different topics, and then through the community programs.
Yeah, thank you. And as you mentioned before, coaches across continents, I know them very well, and I'm sure that they have lots of games connected to all this issue. And I think that whoever is interested, that can connect. Charlie's here from Coaches Across Continents, and he can tell more about how they do it and how they connect games to the learning system. Amin, do you have anything to say about this?
Yeah, for us, we have some activities, like for example, we organize a program. It's called Dank for Community. So or youth to share their opinions, best practices with people. We organize also some the workshops, workshops about leadership. And during this workshop, we give the opportunity for youth to speak and to share their opinions about sports in Morocco, about education in Morocco, but in a positive way, to find some solution and to be like a like a social maker and to be positive.
Okay, thank you. As we went over 1 and almost half an hour, I just want to ask last question because I'm sure that everybody is interested about the mysterious bubble that Chastity is in. Just a couple of words how it looks like and what you do there, because all world now is focused on the bubble in Florida. So just a couple of words in the end about this.
First, I would like to say that the NBA, I mean, just learning from some of the guys that I have friends there, the NBA and the WNBA did a phenomenal job in creating the bubble. I, per se, by being in the bubble, I don't know how they did this in such a short amount of time. We get tested every day. So I have the nose test and the throat test every day. So that is a little uncomfortable for everyone here involved, but we are practicing safety. We have our mask on every day, except on the court and during when we eat dinner, of course, at the training tables. The girls are getting acclimated. It's a really beautiful campus. So the girls are riding their bicycles. We have golf carts. But I think personally, I can say for the women here, women are just going to make it do what it do. There's no other way to say it. We love our sport. We love the game of basketball. We love the platform we have. We haven't been blessed to have this opportunity for a very long time like men. So we understand that just for women's empowerment across the board that we have to keep pushing. Like, this is a sacrifice from the coaches, from the GMs, from the referees. Everyone's come to the bubble. They've quarantined. They've left their family behind. And they've committed to staying here in the bubble for 3 months. So everyone's being positive. And obviously once the game starts, that changes everything. So the games start this weekend. And I think everything that everyone's going through mentally, we get our sense of escape. And I think for the families and speaking to the girls, everyone that isn't in the bubble is excited about watching the games and seeing something different, with this unfortunate situation. So they want to escape too. So hopefully we can provide them with some great entertainment and also use our voices as a great platform to continue the conversation with racial inequality, police brutality, the COVID situation, practicing safety. The girls are making videos about wearing the mask and how important it is. For my college coaches and friends, they're rooting us on because they want to bring basketball back into the NCAA. So we are, we're the test for that. So if we're successful, it shows the world and the NCAA that, hey, maybe we can have our basketball season too. So it's not something easy, but that's why the WNBA and the women in the league are so powerful, and not just the women, but also the men who support the league, our coaches here. And we have a lot of male coaches who left their families behind. We are a strong unit, and it's about the game, and it's about having those strong role models and showing like the world, like, hey, we make sacrifices, we have families too, but we see the big picture. So the food is great. I know there was some stories out there. I know there were some stories with Elena Deladon, and but the WNBA has done a great job. They're really trying to protect us as much as they can. And we want to take our mask off and we want to just party and hang out, but we have NBA security here. I'm sure they're tracking us on these apps that they have us download. So, I'm trying to tell the players, hey, if you're thinking about sneaking out, just know we're being tracked. So we're not going to get out of this bubble. But at the end of the day, everything goes out of the window this weekend when the games start, and the girls get back to doing what they love. The coaches get back on the sidelines. and the fans get to follow their favorite players and follow us to the playoffs and the championship series. So I'm excited to be a part of this. As I tell the girls and as most of the coaches have said, we are a part of history again. You know, first the WNBA being the first professional league for the women. Now, during this unfortunate situation with COVID, we're again a part of history as bringing basketball back to the forefront. And hopefully the media will get on board and write positive stories and share those stories about us being in the bubble too, and what we're doing to promote the game of basketball, which is a game that speaks all languages across the board, whether you're male or female.
Perfect. Thank you. And like and weekend, we will follow Phoenix from now on. Good luck.
Yeah, we should all have Phoenix Mercury fans on right now.
Yeah.
Definitely. Right now, Chastity, you have a bunch of fans now, so you
awesome.
You accomplish your goal. So all of you, please watch WNBA. You know, the league needs support. You know, here in the United States and abroad, obviously games are broadcast all over. So I want to thank you, you know, for a fascinating discussion. There are still questions, and this is an invitation for us to continue on certain topics. There's I saw a question about the parents and how do they get involved in messaging and educating kids to actually be vocal. Fascinating question, probably another webinar. Our next webinar, it will be, you know, a couple of weeks probably about social enterprises and sports, you know, how to build, you know, a business that makes sense and use sports as an educational tool. So that's a very important topic. So I want to thank everybody for this great discussion. Please don't forget, because, you know, in a sense, we are in a self-imposed bubble. Like, don't forget about this. That means, you know, masks are everything that we need to do as individuals to actually go beyond this healthcare crisis and go back to our normal lives. And when we have the normal lives back, hopefully we'll all meet again in Casablanca for the summit, and even before in different webinars. So I want to thank the speakers, thank the audience, you know, my colleagues, you know, Anna, Conrad, Aaron, Laurel, you know, Carrie, you know, from World Learning for this webinar. Please stay in touch. Please, you know, value this network, and let's continue to do our work to make sports what it can be, a potentially extremely powerful tool for education and for development. So good luck, stay safe. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.